Hello, everybody. This is Jennifer Hasser with Kendore Learning, and I am really excited for tonight's presentation. Thank you so much for joining us. We have an amazing speaker here tonight. First, want to just say, hopefully you've been hanging out watching our COVID webinar series and hopefully enjoying it. And we will be adding more webinars, trainings, and our clicks, which are Kendore Learning communities, to our schedule coming up in about the next week. So if you want to keep an eye on our website, we'll be adding a bunch of different topics and dates coming up. We also have our summer training schedule. We have a couple summer trainings still coming up. We just started our part 1 of vocabulary training called Wordplay this week, and that's been pretty fun. But I want to go ahead and let a couple of people still get in here. We have quite a nice response to this topic, so I think people are going to be pleased with Hettie's presentation. But it's obviously something that with the COVID situation right now and all the homeschooling and disruption in our lives, anxiety is definitely playing a pretty big role. It always plays a role in kids with learning issues, but I think this is amplifying it quite a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Hettie Johnson. I've known her for quite a while. When I was president of the International Dyslexia Association of Georgia, she was president of the International Dyslexia Association of Alabama. So we are neighbors, but her accent is a little more Southern than mine. So hopefully you'll enjoy her adorable Southern drawl. All right, so Hettie has been a speech language pathologist for 50 years and has specialized in dyslexia with Orton Gillingham training since 2000. She's in private practice in Hoover, Alabama. She received her bachelor's in 1970 from Auburn University, her master's from the University of Montevallo, and did traineeships at Duke University and Birmingham VA Hospital. She taught on the university level and has worked with students from preschool through graduate school, as well as in nursing homes and home health. She has published in the area of severe speech and language problems and has presented at conferences across the United States and in England. She has held offices at the Speech and Hearing Association of Alabama and the International Dyslexia Association of Alabama. She was part of the Dyslexia Friends group that helped to write the Alabama Dyslexia Resource Guide. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Hettie Johnson. Are you there, Hettie?
I am. I am. And I'm so excited to get to be here. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you so much for coming. I just want to let you know, we're going to have Hettie's presentation for an hour and then, give or take a few, and then we will have questions and answers. So if you want to submit your questions, I'll keep an eye on them during the presentation, and then we'll have a question and answer session at the end. So thank you so much, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. Take care. Well, I am so excited to see you. We're going to talk about the anxiety and learning connection, and I'm not sure that that I've got this going very well. There we go. And it's going to be something very exciting that is going to help students, not just students. It just helps people. I just have a question. Does anyone here know anyone with anxiety? And I think I know the answer to that. It's normal. Anxiety is normal, especially right now, and especially if someone is struggling with anything. I've done it with children as young as 4 and 5, and up to like people that were almost 90. And it's just so exciting to see the results across the board. One student that I worked with right at the beginning of COVID, it was the first time I ever Zoomed, and he's 23 years old and a law student and very anxious and very brilliant and not dyslexic, but anxious. And so we did this in like a 2 to 3 hour session on Zoom, and that's the only time we worked. And it's teaching the neurology, what's going on with anxiety, and to give the person like a key that they can help themselves. And it was amazing how much it helped him. And he was struggling with, it was just making him anxious about the legal writing course he was taking. And we were yelling, I love legal writing, just even though he didn't love it yet, because it helped his brain come online with him and helped him to love it. And he wrote me a few days later and said how much it had already helped him. And he said, I've almost finished my legal writing paper, and he signed it, I love legal writing. And so I love that. And one other student that I can especially tell you about was 19 and was flunking out of the University of Alabama, making 30s and 40s. And again, we did this strategy that was in person and a number of years ago, but it takes about 2 to 3 hours of teaching this and teaching it to the family members along with especially younger students, not in this case, but this 19-year-old who was making 30s and 40s and all Fs. Within a couple of months, when I talked to his dad one day, he said he was making straight A's. And I know that sounds impossible, but the deal is and that's what's going to happen with us tonight. I didn't have to teach either of those young men how to be smart. They already were smart. They already knew what to do, but I had to teach them how to not shut down. And that's what this is about, and how to study in fun ways that would also help them not shut down. So it's all about your brain. And so we're going to talk about where I want you to touch the parts of your brain that are going to light up here. Like touch these parietal lobes, and I want you to yell out with me. I'm counting on you. Yell out, touching and moving. That part will light up if you're touching and moving. Now, seeing in the back occipital lobes, and then temporal lobes above your ears, hearing and talking. And that makes this magic triangle that Samuel Orton, I have that picture of the multisensory triangle over to the right. That is the magic triangle of touching, talking, hearing, seeing, doing it all at once, that ties together, that makes those neurons that fire together, wire together in your brain, that makes learning faster and easier. Because the whole point of this, which I always tell someone when we start this session, the whole point is I want you to make better grades easier, and for homework in school to be fun, actually. And I want you to have more time to do what you love. More success with less stress, and more time to play. And who doesn't want that? So then, in addition to that triangle, the prefrontal cortex, it's where the executive functions are, which, like a CEO, we might call this the CEO of our brain. And so the executive functions that this part does, it's like thinking, focusing, planning, compute, analyze, reason, organize, self-control, all those executive functions of thinking. So now we want to think about, we're going to talk about this watchdog in your brain. But before we do that, I want to think again about the brain and how we want that magic triangle to be working together. So just playing while you study, yelling out. Well, I want you, let's all do some jumping jacks. If you're willing and able and feel like it, I want you to get up and we're going to do 10 jumping jacks. Count them with me out loud. Ready, go. 1, 2, 3, I hope I hear you. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We could do that while we're studying, and not saying the numbers, saying what we're studying. We could be, maybe have what we're studying up on the wall or on a big whiteboard or something, or butcher paper on the wall, and maybe jumping rope and yelling out what you're studying. Maybe having what you're studying. This is getting that magic triangle going, because you're seeing, you're talking, hearing, you're touching, moving at the same time, and you're doing it on purpose, thinking, using your executive functions. And so you might write what you're learning. Like maybe you're studying the water cycle, and you have evaporation, I would want you to, when you first get a study guide, to maybe put on just plain paper plates, precipitation, maybe if you're, and this could be for a law student. I mean, even they might not want to do paper plates, but it makes it more fun to, or just anything you can manipulate, flashcards, but the more fun, the better. Precipitation. If I was going to have what I was studying, I'd put it on the front, and I would put like the bullet points on the back at whatever level, just a little bit, not a lot, but I would force my memory to come up with what precipitation is. And then I would say, oh, it's when rain falls on your head or snow. And I'd check it and say, yes, woo, I'm right, throw, and I'd throw it like a frisbee. That is what makes it fun. We've got to make it fun. Okay, so here we go. So the watchdog of your brain, that little kind of pinky red part, that is the amygdala. And the amygdala, in this big picture, this comes out of a book from Goldie Hawn, who also is into the amygdala. And her book is called The Mind Up Curriculum. This is it'll be in the references, and it's wonderful. And it's all about helping the amygdala to feel safe also. With a little pink, there, that little pink, that's the amygdala. You've got one in each hemisphere. The amygdalas are the guardian of your brain. They're watching to make sure that everything coming into your brain through those senses, that comes in through those senses, has to be checked out by the amygdala. And the amygdala's job is to shut down your prefrontal cortex, where thinking is learning and remembering is going to have to go through there to get remembered. It shuts down that prefrontal cortex if that input seems even potentially unpleasant, boring, frustrating, or if you just feel like it might lead to embarrassment. The amygdala it's a filter, and it will send you into fight, flight, or freeze if it thinks that there's any danger. It can make you either win-win or lose-lose. And I think that all of us want to win-win. So that's what we're after. And all of this it comes a lot from, well, any neurologist. I mean, I've studied many neurologists. The one that I'm going to be talking so much about in here is Judy Willis. And this book, Learning to Love Math, she has several, and they're all in your references, plus live links to go to watch videos. But she is all into the amygdala, and she is on Goldie Hawn's board. And so she's very awesome. So I'm going to be talking a lot about her findings. So here is going to be an example. My husband took this picture on the Serengeti. We were on the Serengeti in Tanzania, and we had this beautiful tree. I want you to sit here, get your book in front of you, hold your book in front of you, and I want you to just sit under this nice, safe shade tree and read your book. But I don't want you to notice that there are 8 lionesses in the tree, plus one on the ground right next to you. Okay, so what if you're reading, and then all of a sudden, all of those lionesses said, oh, tasty, and they're all attacking you. You have 9 lionesses about to eat you. What will your amygdala tell you to do? I would think fight, flight, or freeze. Would your amygdala possibly say, it's okay, you can relax? I don't think it would ever tell us that, and I think you feel that way too. So assuming you don't want lose-lose, we're going to get that out of the way first, okay? Because the amygdala is like a light switch. It's a filter that all that information has to come in through, and the amygdala only, basically, Judy Willis says that it asks one question, really. It says, will this input be pleasurable? And if the answer is no, it will instantly go into survival mode, like under the lion tree, and it will block. This is a quote from Judy Willis. It blocks the information from going to the prefrontal cortex. So you cannot think and learn. It's no wonder this doesn't work well. And it increases the blood and the nutrients to your arms and legs and to your eyes. So you can be panicked, and your heart rate and everything. And on top of that, it will flood your brain. It's a pump. It's also a pump. It will flood your brain with stress chemicals such as cortisol, and negative feelings just take control. So I like to say, if the amygdala ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. Kind of like mama ain't happy, nobody happy. So let's think about win-win instead. What if you, I want you to pump your arms and tell me win-win, win-win. If your amygdala gets the idea, this will be pleasurable because of what you're telling your brain. That's what this is all about, self-talk, what to say when you talk to yourself, okay? So if the amygdala thinks, I can do this, even though inside you might not think it, just like the law student, him telling himself, I love legal writing, is a clue, is a cue to the amygdala that he must like it after all. Oh, this must be safe. Oh my gosh, I thought it was dangerous. And really, so this is how we're gonna make this happen. And it happens. I've seen it happen so many times. I don't have time to tell you all the stories. They're awesome. And you can do this. What I want is I want each of you to take this presentation, and I will send you the PowerPoint. I want you to teach this wherever you are, because it changes lives. It changes lives. So anyway, so if the amygdala takes that information in, and you're saying this will be pleasurable, it will immediately send the information to the prefrontal cortex so you can learn and have self-control. Like Judy Willis talks about, that the prefrontal cortex is where you have reflective thinking or conscious thinking, where you can calmly learn and think, versus fight or flight is the reflexive brain, or the animal brain, the reptilian brain, where you can't, you're supposed to fight. You're not supposed to be learning when you're in a panic. So on top of sending the information, the amygdala will pump out dopamine, which is a burst of joy. And like maybe you smiled when we did jumping jacks. It just gives you joy, and that is dopamine being pumped out. And that's the key to life here. Is we want, if we can keep ourselves pumped with dopamine, as much as we can, we will have joy. And on top of that, Judy Willis again calls it a memory chip that gives all those functions of thinking, learning, focusing, motivation, joy, memory, everything. And it's just like we could put a memory chip in your computer to help it to have more memory. But I actually brought some extra memory chips. And so if you want them, I'm going to toss them out to you right now. And they're going to go all the way to Budapest, where we have someone watching. And so here they come. These are memory chips for you. I want you to catch them and put them in. And it will enable all those executive functions. Okay. And then our multisensory strategies, like when we were throwing a plate, like throwing what we're studying, or just motivating ourselves, moving it around, lying down. One of my other favorite things is my big exercise ball, and just sitting on it is good. Bouncing on it, or you won't be able to see me, but I would lie down on it on my stomach and put flashcards that are color-coded in front of me while I'm lying on the floor on this ball. And I would talk about those flashcards while I move them, like while I pull them together, like maybe I'd have like a president's name and pull it here, and a date of something, and where they were, and put them all together. And then I would take those cards and just throw them in the air and yell it out. And again, the more joy, the better. That's the key. And so we're going to make a fist of our brain. This comes from Judy Willis and Goldie Hawn. So I want your fists up here, and so wiggle your pinkies. The pinkies are the back of your brain, where you see the occipital lobe. So that's the pinkies. And the front of your brain is the prefrontal cortex, where you think, is your thumbs. So wiggle your thumbs for me. And then the index finger tips, those are the amygdalas. And I didn't tell you this one yet, the hippocampus is the tips of your middle fingers. That's where the memory is. So when so put them back together. So information comes in through your senses, but they can't do the thinking, goes through the amygdala to be checked out. And if the amygdala thinks this is going to be safe, it's pleasurable, I feel good about it, I know I can do it, it will send that information to thinking, and then that will send to your hippocampus for memory. And on the opposite way that we don't want, if the amygdala takes in information and says, oh, I can't do that, oh, I can't, then it will shut you down, put you into panic mode, and it's no fun. We don't want that. Okay, so SPA are just steps. The S is self-talk, the P is point out only what's right, and the A is advocate for yourself. And this was something that came to me in 2012 is when, but I have copyright 2016, but 2012, and I'd already been a speech for 42 years at that point, which is a long time. And it's like I just heard in my brain, you do all these strategies, because that's what I used to do, talks on all kinds of strategies. And this is a strategy, but it said in my brain, I heard you do all these strategies, Hettie, but if they're shut down, nothing works. And so the SPA came about. And one of my students drew a picture of a spa. This is a brain relaxing in a hot tub. And so self-talk is the S of SPA. And so this is really where we're starting, what you need to teach the student. Oh, let's see, timer, 20 minutes, just to remind myself. Okay, so I want to teach your student to tell their brain, I really want it to be out loud as much as possible, but if there's somewhere that it'd be embarrassing, obviously I don't want them to do that. I don't want them to look foolish or feel foolish, but I want them to practice telling their brain what they want to happen in present tense, because your brain believes you. And if you say something, if you tell your brain, I'm going to be great at reading, or I'm going to love math, your brain, we need to program it now. So your brain, in that case, would say, well, let me know when. Okay, whenever. When you're ready, tell me. So we're going to tell our brain, I'm good at this now. And one of my recent 10-year-old student, he wrote, I love reading. And we're going to, again, to write it. I love to have them write and decorate it. Let them write it and decorate it. Or if they don't feel good writing it, let someone else. I always have, it's possible, both parents, if they're, or whoever is in the home with the child, with this person, whoever's important to them, grandparents, teachers, tutors. I love having people because they all need to be on board. It's not like this will necessarily work if it's just one, especially if it's someone, a minor, and maybe other people in the home or somewhere. If they're really discouraging him or her, that's going to be not good. And we really want everyone on board as much as possible, because it can be just life-changing, is life-changing. So they might say this, they might write it and yell it and say, I love reading, because your brain believes you that you love it now. And it's going to feel like, oh, I guess reading isn't going to kill you after all. Well, and to tell yourself something like, I'm good at this, or like this student put, brain, I'm okay, and throw it. Yay. Oh, and here he also wrote, I'm good at this. Yay. And he wrote, win-win. I want you to win-win. So, and saying something like, if it is hard, it's normal for things to be hard. Everybody has things that are hard, and this is so normal. I want to let our students know there is not anything wrong with you. You are wonderful. You are wonderful. And to tell yourself, I'm just having trouble, I can do this. The point is to reassure your amygdala. Like that law student I talked about, somewhere around this point, he asked me, he said, oh, so we're tricking the amygdala. And it just hit me that I said, well, no, I don't want to trick it. I want to reassure the amygdala. Reassure the amygdala. And so this one, I love this. I want you to pump your arms. I love this. I learned this one and it's still on a YouTube of a talk similar to this, the first time I ever did it in 2012. And a lady got over the end and she said, I'm a doctor and I'm dyslexic. And she said when she was in medical school that she would be failing a course, making an F and hating it. And she would start saying, I love this. And she said she did this throughout medical school. And she said, and it's still on that 2012 or maybe it was 13 video, she said, invariably, she said, I would end up loving the course and making an A, and it would become my best course, which was like amazing to me. But even more amazing, a few months later, I was doing this with a student and his parents. And at this point, the dad said, he said, that's what I did with Algebra 2. He said he was failing it, awful, hating it. And he started saying, I hope you're pumping your arms with me. He would say, I love Algebra 2. And so in his case, he made an A. He ended up loving it. It became his best class. And this is what really got me. He majored in math in college, and now he does math for his whole life. That, to me, was the proof of the pudding. I mean, and again, telling your brain this is not lying. I've had some students say, but that's lying. And they might say, well, I like Algebra 2 a little. They don't want to say I love, but we really need to tell our brain enthusiastically where it believes us, because then it will give you superpowers of dopamine and joy and extra memory. I mean, everybody needs that extra focus, extra motivation, and it's amazing what it will do. And so you could make up your own. I want them to make up their own. Like when I'm water skiing, I love to slalom ski and snow ski, and I use self-talk, especially like water slaloming. There were all these big waves a couple of years ago when I face planted twice in a row, and it just felt like concrete to my eyes, my contact lens going 30 miles an hour and just concrete. But my husband said, do you want to quit? And I said, no, I don't want to quit. So I started saying, what did I start saying? It's only water. But I didn't say to my amygdala, I did not say, but it feels like concrete. If I did, the amygdala would have done, I would have crashed, because it would see that as danger. Keep your amygdala on a needs to know basis, because it didn't have to know it felt like concrete, because I'm a good skier, and I knew I could do it, and it works like a charm. And I'm out there skiing. If it's rough, I'm saying, it's only water, it's only water. What are you thinking? And so then I want you to, it's normal to hear that negative voice. It's normal. But what we're going to do is we're going to drown it out. We're going to overcome that negative voice, and we're going to say, and I want you to stomp your hand for me or stomp your feet and tell me, stop it, brain. You can't shut me down. I can do this. I love this. This is my favorite subject. Wow. And this is going to, again, make the amygdala know that must be okay after all. And I had another student I wanted to mention. Oh yeah. This is like a 5-year-old thinking of using self-talk. This little boy was 5, and he was afraid. He had a phobia about water and flooding, and he was afraid to poop. And so he would go days and days. And we did this session with him. And in the middle of the session, or towards the end of the session, he said, I need to go to the bathroom. And so he went, and then he came back a couple minutes later, and he said, that's never happened. He said, it came right out, which is kind of funny, but just the truth of it all. And it was just fear of something that was keeping him from succeeding. And also with a 6-year-old and with a 7-year-old who were both having a slump in baseball, in Little League baseball, and they used to hit home runs and then they didn't. And we did this session, and they went back to hitting home runs right away. And the 6-year-old, the next year, he won the game because of his home run. And his mother said, what'd you do, son? And he said, I just calmly told my brain, I got this. I've got this. And the mother said, do you know that you just use positive self-talk? And he said, isn't that what Miss Hettie said to do? Which I thought was pretty funny, that, just young and so much get it. Now I want to show you, and I don't know why that happened, sorry. I'm going to zip through these. There we go. Okay, this would be unexpected tonight. This is a stroke patient who's gotten to be a dear friend. I saw her the first time on Zoom. I've never met her in person, but she had a stroke, and she gave me all permission, she and her family, to show this because they're so excited to share the power of the amygdala, the power of dopamine in her life. She had a stroke 3 years ago at age 52. She's 55, and she is really, it just took her speech away. And she's a very brilliant woman, very, professional, but she had lost her speech. She could just say just a word, but couldn't follow it up, couldn't make a sentence, just could get a word and then just get frustrated and depressed. You can imagine. So this was May 1st. We had started like April 28th. So I'm going to play this like 37 seconds.
Shut me down. You stop. Stop shutting me down. I want you stop it. Watch over me. Yeah. Oh my God. What a hug. Can I have a hug?
Okay, so that is Julie. That was, like I said, one of our early sessions, and that was the first sentence she had come out with on her own. I mean, we hadn't said that. I just say, watch over me. And that was just the beginning. And so now I want to show you today, this is a session today, we were talking about Virginia Berninger. There's a quote from her that was in a Spell Links letter just recently. If you do Spell Links, it's wonderful online. And in this Virginia Berninger quote, she said something about if we can say it, we can write it. If we write it, we can read it, something like that. And I started using that idea with Julie, and also a technique called chaining that is something I published back in 1988 in Speech and Language Hearing Services in the schools, and it's in the references, and it has a lot to do with helping her. But the main thing we have done is getting her amygdala happy. We have been through this presentation several times, just so it just internalizes the joy and how much that can help to bring out. She still has had a stroke. I mean, she's had a stroke. And so that damage is here, but it's incredible. So I want you to see how she's doing today. And we're talking about that Virginia Berninger idea, jumping off of it.
Well, stop it there. But what if you tell me this one more time before we stop, okay? I can think about it. Yeah. Say it, write it, read it, sing it, spell it, learn it, remember it. Yes. Superpowers. With superpowers. Yeah. And what in your brain gives you those superpowers? Dopamine. Yes, dopamine. And what part of your brain pumps out the dopamine if you keep it happy? Your amygdala. Yes, amygdala. What did I do? Amygdala. Amygdala power. Amygdala powers. Yes. That's awesome. Well, Julie, I love you.
Awesome. So I hope that you're joyful with me about Julie, and she's just going to keep getting better. And what has really helped was she was so depressed. I mean, think of 3 years without your speech, so depressed and so shut down. And now she is like joyous, and it's just been amazing and so much fun. And I've just seen her just as, I mean, not that I have to say this, but as a ministry, I didn't know that I could even, I wasn't sure what I could do. Plus, it's joy, it's so much joy to me that it's a ministry, it's a win-win for me and for her. So the P of SPA is point out only what's right. This is for the people around the student, anybody responding to the student or person, to this person pointing out only what's right. You know how it is if somebody picks at you, how it makes you, it's not good. It tends to make us act, it messes us up. I don't know if you're like me. If I feel like somebody is always picking at me, it's hard for me to be myself. And that, I think a lot of the time when people are struggling, that's what they're hearing a lot. And so so the student self-talk, which would be also for parents, to anybody to them, be kind to yourself, that you are in the driver's seat of your brain, and this is the point out part, show your amygdala only what you got right. Like I want you to pretend like here's your paper, you got a paper back, and there were 20 questions and you only got one right. And instead of saying, oh no, I want you to say, look, amygdala, look, I got this part right. Now I'll get that part. So the now I'll get that part is code for it's wrong, okay? It's wrong. We're going to get it, but we're not going to tell our amygdala, again, put the amygdala on a needs to know basis. Look, amygdala, I got this right. Now I'll get these. And I want parents to say the same sort of thing, and other people, teachers. And to say, if we make a mistake, I want to say, I learned from that. I'll do better next time. And this is about the time that I bring out my vacuum cleaner and the Dyson. Like James Dyson is dyslexic, and it took him 5 years and 5,127 prototypes to get his electric one right. And I picture that he was saying things like, I can do this, or saying things like, I learned from that 5,000th mistake, but I can do it. We've got to keep ourselves pumped up, like if we're like a coach who would be pumping us up. And Henry Ford, who's I've read was dyslexic, how he said, if you think you can, or you think you can't, you're right, which is what I want to keep us thinking about. And Proverbs 16:24 says, pleasant words, like I would say, these are pleasant words to yourself, that I can do it. And so in Proverbs it says, pleasant words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones. And the honeycomb structure is one of the strongest, if not the strongest structure in nature. And that's why they use it like build a space station and rockets, because it's so strong for the least material and weight. So this to me is saying pleasant words are the strongest structure in nature. And I want us to listen to a little bit from Rita Pearson, this TED Talk. We're just going to see a tiny bit. But and I want you to watch it all. I have 3 TED Talks listed, and I'd love for you to watch them all because there's so much like SPA. And so, let's see. She's going to tell a story about a student who missed 18 on a test.
I have spent my entire life.
I'm going to skip to it.
Students, you were chosen to be in my class because I am the best teacher and you are the best students. They put us all together so we could show everybody else how to do it. One of the students said, really? I said, really? We have to show the other classes how to do it. So when we walk down the hall, people will notice us. So you can't make noise. You just have to strut. And I gave him a saying to say, I am somebody. I was somebody when I came. I'll be a better somebody when I leave. I am powerful and I am strong. I deserve the education that I get here. I have things to do, people to impress, and places to go. And they said, yeah. You say it long enough, it starts to be a part of you.
Now here's the story. I especially want you to hear, and then we'll stop this.
I gave a quiz, 20 questions. Student missed 18. I put a +2 on this paper and a big smiley face. He said, Miss Pearson, is this an F? I said, yes. He said, then why'd you put a smiley face? I said, because you on the roll. You got 2 right, you didn't miss them all. I said, and when we review this, won't you do better? He said, yes, ma'am, I can do better. You see, Minus 18 sucks all the life out of you. Plus 2 said I ain't all bad.
Okay. So here we go. So I just love that. That's what I want us to tell our students, to say things like, you got this right, and now you can review these, we'll get these, instead of pointing out what's wrong. Angela Duckworth, who you'll see, who in her TED Talk, Grit, she talks, it's a great one too, and Carol Dweck, in Angela Duckworth's book called Grit, she told a story of, she said that toddlers don't give up learning to walk, because when a toddler takes their first steps and then falls down, everybody is saying, yay, even though they just fell down. We're not saying, but you fell down. We're just excited. We're celebrating what they did right, which was the walking. And then she said that, but when they start preschool or kindergarten, she said that's when headaches and stomach aches start, because we tend to think it's our job to point out what's wrong so we can help them. But I'm saying to do the opposite. And that's what Rita Pearson is saying in that, and lots of other people. And it's amazing. I had a parent who wrote me after we had done our work, and she said her son was 13, and it's going to be somewhere in here, but she said, I find that pointing out what's right works wonders, and it really does. So, but I want to back up on that one. I want to think about where I learned this first thing about avoid saying, but you know this, or remember, or this will be easy. I learned this years ago from a young man who was like mid-30s and who was very discouraged. I mean, he had a college degree, he had a job, but he was very discouraged. And I met him and I asked him, I said, was there anything that shut you down? And he said, yes. He said, Mom and Dad would say, but you know this, or remember? And he said, it crushed me. He said, it made me think, if I knew it, I wouldn't have missed it. And he said it made him think, I must have something really wrong with my brain, because if I knew it, and now I don't, and it would just crush him. And so that's why. And when we say remember to somebody, what they're hearing is you should remember, and you don't. So I know it's hard not to say that, but that's what I don't want you to say. You know, I'm going to give you what I do want you to say. And if we say, like, this will be easy. I learned this from Paul Riccomini of Penn State in a math seminar last year. And that gives the same idea when we tell a student, well, this will be easy. Even though we say all these things because we're trying to encourage them. But I just want to point out that it's not encouraging, it's more threatening. Instead, I want to celebrate what's right. Like, I want to say something like, wow, this is right, or wow, and now we're going to get these. And so, like, I had a 16-year-old student. She read, the word was invitation, and she read invention. Oh, shoot, there I go. And so as soon as she said invention instead of invitation, I said, you got the beginning and the ending right. And I like to use lots of physical. So I think that's so important. But I just said, you got the beginning and the ending right, didn't she? Because she said invention instead of invitation. And then I said, now let's check the inside of that word. And then I helped her to save face, which is so crucial. This is like most crucial thing, that we've got to help them save face. Even though she was 16, I mean, she had driven herself, to her appointment, and I'm sure she had read the word invitation before, but I'm sure she had, but that's not the time to say, that, because she missed it. And there's a famous quote that if they could, they would. And it's not that she couldn't ever, but she couldn't then. I mean, we don't make mistakes on purpose. I mean, sometimes we might think, well, he or she is just being lazy, and because it makes it seem that way. It can make it seem that way, or it can make it seem like, well, they're not trying, which makes us more frustrated. We've got to just think, give them grace that the reason they're not seeming to care is that they are shut down. The amygdala is telling them not to care. I mean, the amygdala is telling them just to protect themselves, to fight, flight, or freeze. And, you know, they're going to look like they don't care, but it doesn't mean it. It doesn't mean they don't care. And so I want to keep that in your mind. And so to help, I want to tell you a story about how my husband will be married 50 years Saturday. Amazing. And I was a speech path 50 years yesterday. So that's pretty cool. But my husband, he helped me save face. And I want to tell you this story because it's so appropriate for spa. He had suggested that we get me a new car, an SUV, because we have 5 grandchildren, and he was saying that would be good. And my car was like 10 years old, but I loved my car. It was a straight shift, 6-speed, and I loved driving. You know, but I finally came on board and I said, okay, because he meant well. He wanted me to have a new car, so we got it. So we got it. I drove this beautiful new car home, and he drove his home, and I wrecked it in the garage. In fact, I didn't even get it in the garage. I just sort of misjudged on the edge, and I did $5,000 worth of damage, and just like that. And my husband was, and I've never hit the garage before since, but it's worth it for this story. And my husband was standing there going, just in shock. But what he did helped me save face. And just keep this in. We want our students to give themselves grace. We want to give them grace and help them save face, because that will keep their amygdala happy. It'll help their amygdala feel calm. So what Bill did, I got out, he took me in his arms and he said, it's okay. He said, remember when I did the same thing when I backed into Natalie's new car? He said, that can happen to anybody. He said, we can get it fixed. It's okay. How nice was that? How kind was that? One parent a while back, one parent said he sure set the bar high, which he did, but he gave me such grace. And I tell you that because we need to give our students grace, give each other grace, because it will help everybody's amygdalas feel better. One parent, when I was doing this, thinking about pointing out only what's right, he said, my husband should have said, you drove all the way home. But he didn't think to say that, but it was pretty funny. Okay, so then be relentlessly positive. And this is my other main story that's, I think, so crucial. About 15 years ago, a student who was a gifted student, high school student here in Birmingham, in one of our wonderful high schools, and he was 15, gifted. He was in a terrible wreck. And so he was in a coma. He had severe brain damage. He was in a coma for 6 weeks at UAB hospital. And then he was at the hospital and Spain Rehabilitation Center for 6 months. And so the parents called us one day. The mother was a friend of my husband's growing up, and we hadn't really been part of this yet. But she called and said, would we come over? Because they had discharged him and he had never produced voice. And he still had a tube in his stomach because he couldn't swallow. He was working towards that. And so we went to his house, and he could walk, but he was, he had this brain damage, and he was drooling because of not being able to swallow, and he had no voice. 6 months it's been. And so he had in his back pocket, he had an index card, and on it was the alphabet. And so he pointed out to the letters to spell out, I can talk, but I forgot how. And it just, how sad this was. Just a brilliant young man, and just like that. So we wanted to hug our kids and encourage them to be safe, and for all of us to be safe. But anyway, so I told him that yes, I would work with him. I'm just going to call him Philip here. And so in speech pathology, what you do to get the vocal cords to come together to make voice is things like pushing, like if you think of like weightlifting, and that's a sound of your, that straining sound, that's your vocal cords coming together in order to fix your thorax so you can hold your breath and have extra power. And so we did lots of work trying to get him and to get some voice. And so I would have one of the parents in with every session with me the whole time in case we had a breakthrough, which we really didn't. We worked that day for like an hour. We did like an hour every time, and then Monday, Wednesday, Monday, Wednesday, Monday, Wednesday. And we basically, we didn't get anything. We didn't get anything. And but that third week, I did get, we were doing push-ups. We were on the floor doing push-ups. And he did get a little bit on inhalation, just barely. But he got a little bit on, but you can't talk on inhalation, but he got it. And so so I started, giving him, I had a deck of cards with me just to keep track if we had something happen, which that was something. It was a big something. So I would put cards. We're doing our push-ups next to each other in his den, and his mother's there watching us. And every time he would just do that little bit. So that was our only breakthrough we had all that time. And then so the next Monday when I got there, he came to the door with his aunt who was sitting with him, and he said, "Hi." And he had total voice back, although he was nasal. He was nasal because of the brain damage and the damage he had, but he had his voice totally back. Because what I believe happened is, I'm sure is what happened, even though this is before SPA came to be as a strategy to teach, I was already doing SPA. I was pointing out only what was right. For those 3.5 weeks, all I did was point out what was right, which was nothing, kind of. I was dying on the inside. But every time he would do something, like we would be trying to push or pull, lift ourselves out of our chair, pull on the table, I would say, "Yes, you pulled." I point out what was right, although I was dying, because he didn't get any voice. Or I'd say, "Yes, you pushed," or "Yes, you're trying," or "Yes, you're here," or "Yes, you're looking at me." And that's about, or even, "Yes, you're breathing," which is really digging for something. But that's what I did for those 3.5 weeks, was I pointed out only what was right. And what I'm just sure is what happened, or I feel what happened, is that after 3.5 weeks of him getting the feeling, I'm doing everything Hettie wants. I'm doing everything, even though he really wasn't. I think his amygdala was shut down after 6 months of no voice. And he's a smart boy, still a smart boy, young man. But I think his amygdala was just, had given up, and he was shut down. But it took those 3.5 weeks of thinking, I'm doing everything right. And then it came out all at once, because the amygdala is like a light switch, like this win-win, lose-lose. It's kind of like on or off. Your brain is either on for learning and then everything wonderful can happen, or it's off in fight or flight. And that's not a good place to be, and nobody enjoys that. So I was with him, I was relentlessly positive. And that law student, again, he told me, he wrote in one of his emails, he said, "I'll never forget relentlessly positive." That he really liked that. And then there's that quote from that mom. So parents and teachers hold a major key. Like, we need our students feeling like, yes, I'm good at this, like he felt. And oh, I forgot to say this one, it's really important. If they even sense our frustration, the amygdala sees that as danger, as a lion in that tree. And I know that's hard. I mean, I'm asking superhuman things of you, but if you can do it, if we can help our students to not even feel like we're being frustrated, I know that's hard, but it really matters. I did this with a student on our back porch right at the beginning of COVID, and the dad really seemed to get it really well, but he's a pretty very no nonsense, kind of gruff guy, a friend, but kind of gruff. And so, but he the whole time he was saying, yes, he so got it. But then I saw the student just a few days ago, just outside, and he was telling me that the dad was using it against him, kind of was
Hey, Hettie. How are you doing? Thank you so much for this. This has been great. Do you want to go ahead and shut the presentation, and then we can ask some questions? Or you can leave it up. It doesn't matter. All right. So
this is so funny that I'm having trouble. Well, I'm just going to, I don't want to stop my video. It's like my cursor is not showing up.
That's okay. I can.
You can hit stop share.
I'm going to do that.
Can you stop my sharing?
I'm trying.
If I move this, if I move this up. Okay, good. I'm going to get rid of that.
There we go.
Yes. Yay.
There we go. Okay, great. Alrighty. So we've got several questions, and one of them was, you were talking about how you should, really just try to say, the positives. And in a lot of approaches, especially like OG, we ask students to correct their errors. And she was worried that might be pointing out what they did wrong. And how do you handle that positively?
Boy, that's a great question. Look, I want to point out what's right. Okay, I would point out something they did right, like, you did this right, now let's check this. That's kind of my wording. Can you picture, and because I'm OG trained too, and I, for 40 years, I did intervention like that for 40 years every day, but now that we're old and I do it every day because my husband retired, and so that's why I do it this way, but it's so amazing. But can't that work if we just point out this, you said like with that girl when I said, you got the beginning of the word. Can we do that? Can you picture that working? You got this right. Now we'll check this. Or now can we check this? Or now can we go over this? But that's a great question, but I know it can work because I've been doing it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and that's exactly it. It's like, if you focus, I totally agree with you. We focus on the improvement. Like, oh my gosh, you made 3 less errors.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do.
It's just flipping the script from being like, oh, you made 8 errors, but instead of being, well, you made 2 less than last time. That's amazing. That's such an improvement.
Yeah, just what was right, of like, you got 18 right, or you got 2 right. Can you do it that way instead of less errors even?
Well, right. But it's like like when kids go through and they're doing the like repeated readings and they're doing fluency drills and things like that, we are in the classroom a lot of times. So they're working with each other too. And so, but they've come to, embrace it as being like, that was an improvement instead of that was a negative. Do you see, like, it's, it's like, I've got almost everything right except for these. So the kids, I think it's a lot about exactly what you're saying about approaching it positively, that it's not a terrible thing, to not get it right the first time. Okay, so we got another one. How do you deal with this with like teenagers who might think this is like kind of fake and inauthentic?
That it's kind of what?
Kind of fake or inauthentic, like teenagers who might be a little grouchy.
Yes, that's another great question, because I've dealt with a lot of people. I like to make sure that they know that this is normal, that it's normal to feel that way, and that, okay, and I might even point out that, like, in fact, I was doing this with a 8-year-old yesterday on Zoom, that he just feels so embarrassed, and feels like nobody likes him and all this. And I talked about that. Sometimes we do, a lot of people are not as confident as they look. A lot of people, isn't that true? I mean, nobody's as confident as they always look. And so to point out that it's normal, that then we'll take like a big piece of paper, construction paper, and put like in the middle of it, we might put a circle with like looking confident, and we'll talk about what does the person do if they look confident. We'll make like lines off and put, maybe they're going to use eye contact, they're going to be walking straight, and we'll practice looking not confident. And I think it's fun for them, for all ages. I want you to show me what it looks like if you're just really not confident, like, oh gosh, and they enjoy to show how could look very not. So I affirm that people, they often will act more confident than they are, and that's okay. So fake it till you make it. I don't know if people don't like that, but I think a lot of people do, and it's kind of, it's okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of research about that. Like, if you smile, it does send chemicals to your brain that say you're happy, whether you're happy or not. I mean, the brain is an amazing thing, and you're right. It's like, if you can calm that amygdala, then you can access what's in that hippocampus, and that's important. I used to make my high school students say ridiculous things before a test. I would say, okay, say, I'm totally going to ace this test. And they would be like, I'm totally going to ace this test. And then I would make them say, I am so hot and all the girls like me. and they would just die laughing. But that was the same thing. It changed the chemical response in the brain. So instead of being, I would make them say it, and then they would giggle and think I was an idiot. But that, that's okay. As long as they're less stressed about, moving forward. I think everything you said is resonates for all ages.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, it's so good for them to hear that this is normal. It's not like you are a loser.
right.
You know, everybody can feel that way. In that book, the one, The Spiritual Depression by Martin Jones, what this book was, it was actually just a series of talks that he had made right in London, right after the bombings, World War II, to all these people about, you know, depression, and talking, what to say. Just picture if you had gone through, if you were in London and Westminster and you had been through those bombings, you would have a lot of anxiety. And just teaching our people that it's okay, talking to yourself is normal and good, because I had one adult tell me, I can't change what I think. And I thought, this is a problem, because you've got to override it even if you don't totally believe it.
Right. Yeah. If you say that, it's not, if you say I can't do it, then you're not going to be able to do it. You know, so it's very true. And this is, I mean, everything you're saying absolutely is supported by research. And this is how, I mean, this is so important for teachers in the classroom to know how to use these strategies, because their kids are going to be so much more successful if they're able to kind of conquer their fears and realize that, you know, failure is a learning opportunity and it's not really necessarily a negative, right?
Yeah.
I mean, right now we've got lots of learning opportunities, you know, things that we can gather from some of these things that are happening around us, because, you know, there's some bad things going on in the world, but kids need to say, like, you know, okay, well, at a minimum, I'll be prepared for my next pandemic, right? You know, right?
If I could, like, this is something really cool. Is in 2016, a girl who had just graduated as a speech pathologist in Paris, Chloe Bourgeois, beautiful French name, and she was 23, and she came and lived with me for 5 weeks and to learn my strategies. And so she came back the next year, and we both presented this together at ASHA in Los Angeles, SPA and Chaining, the speech.
Right.
And so Goldie Hawn is, I know you were probably putting on the, you might have been the, but Goldie Hawn, you know, was a keynote speaker, and she talked about the amygdala, and
Right.
and it was so cool. And like, she talked about how depressed she was for 10 years when she was first discovered, just so depressed, so anxious, and she's so into the amygdala. And so anyway, so Chloe is now doing this in Paris, and she did it with an adult. There was an adult that next, while we were getting ready for ASHA, she saw this woman who was 40 and was so depressed, and she was just so depressed. And so Chloe, and she couldn't get into the, you know, she wanted to be a teacher and couldn't do it. And so Chloe did this with her for like 2 hours, and that's all. And that's all she ever saw her. And that's how I do it generally. I mean, we're in touch maybe, but anyway, it wasn't until like 6 months maybe later that this lady just showed up in Chloe's office in Paris, crying and laughing and giving Chloe chocolates, and said to her, you never will know how much you changed my life, Chloe. She said, I've been accepted to be a teacher now.
That's amazing.
It's amazing.
So,
yeah.
Have you had good success with these techniques with kids with ADHD or working memory deficits?
Yes. Because you know, when you think in slow processing, I mean, not that I have the research, but I have
Right.
stories by the gallon, by the hundreds. I mean, hundreds. It's so awesome because, I mean, when we think about it, it's really simple. It's win-win or lose-lose. If your amygdala thinks you're going to be embarrassed, that's all it takes. And don't our students often feel like they're going to be embarrassed? Yes. They're already embarrassed. So if the amygdala is just with this hair trigger, or even not even that, it's just got you in shutdown, you can't have working memory.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't have it. It doesn't. This is where executive function is, and it's blocked. Right. You know, like Judy Willis says in flat out language, it blocks it from going to the PFC. So where's the memory? Where's the processing speed? You know, I don't
Right.
know. I just think it's like a big deal.
Right. It is. I totally agree. It's a big deal. I mean, that's half of, why I think, teaching should be, a little bit of I keep saying this, like edutaining, like you can educate and entertain at the same time, because it's way better than like edupaining.
Yeah.
Like,
Can I tell you one other that's pretty dramatic? I mean, this girl was 13 when she came to me, and she had been under psychiatric care. She was working with a psychiatrist 5 years, and she's 13. She was on 5 different psychiatric meds a day. She had
wow.
no eyebrows, no eyelashes, and chunks of hair. She had trichotillomania. And the psychiatrist, when the mother was going to bring her to me, the psychiatrist kind of, gave the mother a hard time and said, she's not dyslexic. She just has trichotillomania. Well, I would say she wasn't born to pull her hair out. And so anyway, we did this one day, we did it. And within the next, I kept up with the mother. So in fact, I saw the little sister too another day. But within a couple of months, the mom had texted me that she had all her hair back and she was on one med. I mean, this was with the psychiatrist. I mean, I didn't tell her.
Right. Well, it makes a big difference. If kids don't experience success, your anxiety just gets worse and worse. And if they feel that success is not possible. I mean, I started my career out, I don't know if you know this, Hettie, but with kids with behavior disorders, and those are, that happens over time with failure, because kids learn very quickly it's better to be bad than it is to be stupid. And so you get these behaviors, and a lot of kids, it's like those outward behaviors or those inner behaviors, which tend to be like behavior disorder or anxiety, so those are both very similar, from what causes them and what causes them to get worse. So I think everything that you told us was fabulous tonight, and I just wanted to thank you.
One more thing to that story.
Oh yeah.
I know you're gonna have to.
No, go for it. No.
One more thing to that story about so last year, the year before, she emailed me again and said that the daughter is now in college getting her degree in early childhood education, and she said she has all her hair. She's on one med. She is still on one med a day. And she said, and I love this quote, she said, I will always say that you saved my daughter from massive depression. And it was one session. It was one day.
Wow, that's amazing.
With both parents.
Yeah. Usually, I mean, I definitely think, I've seen a lot where this repetition needs to take place, but if the parents aren't involved, then the repetition and the reminders can't be there when they're struggling with it. So I totally agree. I think, it's just seeing, one person without it being like more of a community involvement and people understanding some of the strategies. It's not likely to take hold if there's not a support system. So that's an excellent point. But anyway, thank you very much, Hettie. I appreciate you spending time with us tonight, and it was good to see you again.
It's so great to see you, Jennifer.
Take care. Have a good night. Bye.